In 2015, when more than 1.3 million people headed to Europe, mostly fleeing a brutal war in Syria, the response of Germany's then Chancellor Angela Merkel was to say, "Wir schaffen das," we can manage this, and open the country's borders. Less than a decade later, and faced with a flow of irregular arrivals, less than 10% of what it was at the peak of the bloc's migration crisis, EU capitals are increasingly saying, "No, we can't," or perhaps more accurately, "we won't." Under intense political pressure from the far-right parties in power in half of a dozen member states and advancing with almost every election in others, governments are outdoing each other in introducing tough anti-immigration measures. This month alone, Germany reintroduced checks at all its land borders. France vowed to restore order on our frontiers. The Netherlands announced its toughest ever regime, and Sweden and Finland proposed harsh anti-immigrant laws. The move risks sustaining EU ties and could endanger not just the bloc's new asylum and migration pact, recently finalized after nearly a decade of fraught negotiations, but its prized free movement Schengen zone. Markus Engler of the German Center for Integration and Migration Research said, "It is hyperactive. It is one of the restrictions after another with no impact assessments and no evidence they will actually work. They are clearly driven by electoral logic." The number of the people recorded arriving as irregular migrants in the EU between January and the end of July was 113,400, a fall of about 36% year on year. Long seen as one of the bloc's most open members, Germany also recently tightened asylum and residency laws, reducing welfare benefits for some refugees, and resumed deporting Afghan nationals for the first time since the Taliban took power in 2021. The fragile three-party socialist-led coalition, trailing far behind its center-right and far-right opposition in the polls, has insisted its reintroduction of checks this month on land borders would curb migration and protect against the acute dangers posed by Islamist terrorism and serious crime. The move has been widely denounced as politically motivated as after a series of knife attacks in which the suspects were asylum seekers and historic success in crunch state elections by the far-right Alternative for Deutschland. At the European level, it was seen in many, though not all, capitals as a potential far-reaching blow to the 27-nation passport-free Schengen zone, considering one of the EU's biggest and most economic important achievements. It is a kind of a trap, a diplomat from one EU member state said. Once you introduce this kind of measure with no real practical justification, how do you sell to voters the notion just a few months later that it's now somehow safe to reverse it? Support came from Hungary's Navist government, which this month threatened to send a bus convoy of migrants to Brussels in protest against EU migration policies. "Welcome to the club," said the Prime Minister Viktor Orban. The Netherlands' new coalition, led by the far-right Anti-Immigration Freedom Party, PVV, did likewise. It has this month promised the strictest admission rules in the EU, saying the country can no longer bear the influx of migrants. The four-party government plans to freeze new asylum applications, provide only basic accommodation, limit family reunification visas, and accelerate forced returns. It also aims to declare an asylum crisis so it can take measures without MPs' approval. Once welcoming Sweden, whose minority right-wing coalition is propelled by the far-right Sweden Democrats, has this month proposed raising the amount it pays to people willing to return home from €880 to 30,000 each. Stockholm also has plans for a law obliging public sector workers to notify undocumented people to authorities, while Finland's coalition, which includes the far-right Finns, wants to ban undocumented people from accessing non-emergency health care. France's new right-wing government, whose survival will depend on whether and when the far-right National Rally (RN) of Marine Le Pen decides to back any further no-confidence vote from the left, is also bent on a far tougher approach. The Prime Minister, Michel Bam, this week described immigration level as often insufferable, abolishing full health care for undocumented people who had been in France at least 3 months, as the RN has long wanted, was not a taboo, he said. Banner also praised what a socialist chancellor in Germany is doing on border controls, calling it a wake-up call for us. His hardline Interior Minister Bruno Ratour said France should see how far we can go to institute permanent checks. So, if they continue like this, truth be told, all of them collectively are going to join hands to destroy that which all of them collectively have succeeded in, which is the Schengen Free Movement Zone. And the way they are going is just a matter of time. It is just a matter of time, because the more the far right are in power in Europe, the more the far right have the power alone to decide. It will be the end of the European Union, because most of these far rights, when you listen to them, they are anti-EU. They don't want that union to continue. They don't want migrants. So it's just a matter of time, because the way it's going, if it continues, the EU will lose that which they have succeeded in doing, which is the Schengen free travel.